but what happens to them when they get there, and how closely do we pay attention to their level of engagement to make sure that they are plugging into campus, that we are sort of remarketing the experience to them as they have it, to make sure that they're maximizing that and we are maximizing retention in the process. On the top end of that, I think a mistake a lot of institutions, small, mid-size, and large, make is they skip market cultivation altogether in their brand work.
Welcome to Small College America, a podcast dedicated to exploring the role and values of small colleges in higher education. I'm Dean Hoke, and I'm joined by my co-host, Kent Barnds.
Thanks, Dean. Today we are joined by Eric Page. He is the Chief Client Officer at Carnegie Higher Ed Marketing and Enrollment. Eric leads strategy and solutions that help colleges and universities navigate complex enrollment, marketing, and institutional challenges. With more than 15 years of experience in higher education communication, enrollment strategy, and marketing, Eric blends data-informed planning with innovative storytelling and digital engagement to drive meaningful outcomes for a diverse range of institutions. Before joining Carnegie, he led admissions recruitment and marketing efforts at the University of Iowa. Big win last night, by the way, for the University of Iowa beating Nebraska. He holds a BS in journalism from the University of Wisconsin River Falls and a master's degree in organizational leadership from St. Ambrose University. It grounds his work in both strategic expertise and collaborative leadership. Eric is a respected voice in higher education, known for advancing effective student-centered practices. Eric, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you.
Thanks, Ken. It's great to be here.
Eric, before Dean leads us off with a couple of questions, you're a recovering journalist. You got your start in work, working in newspapers, Quad City Times, the Eau Claire, Leader, Telegram. You're a reporter. What was that experience like, and how does it connect to what you do today?
You know, I think about that a lot, actually, more than you might think, because I am very glad that I began my career in a place like that. Working at small newspapers, you're sort of a utility player doing everything from reporting to writing to paginating, the pages on the news desk, and a lot of late nights, a lot of hard work, a lot of learning with how to connect with people and be curious about their stories. So I think it laid a really great foundation for me in terms of how to be curious, how to connect, and how to work. That has served me well, really, whether I was on campus or on this side of the desk at Carnegie.
Well, Eric, before we dive into the enrollment strategy side of all this, could you briefly describe your path from campus-based admissions and marketing into your current national role at Carnegie, and how that experience shaped the way you think, particularly about enrollment risk and opportunity, aligning towards small colleges who seem to be so tuition dependent?
Yeah, great question. It's funny when you look back, and I actually love having conversations with people about their career journeys, because I find more and more nobody really ends up where they set out to be. And I am certainly a story like that. I, as Kent referenced, was a sports writer for 5 years out of college, and never dreamed I would work in higher education, and certainly never dreamed I would be a consultant in higher education. But it is a serendipitous path that, if I trace back the people who have really made an impact on my career and maybe taken a leap of faith on me, when I hadn't yet proven that I was capable of doing something, it's a fun path to trace. So I worked at the Quad City Times. I was a sports writer. I was covering the University of Iowa in 2006 and 2007. And in a lot of ways, it was a dream job. I mean, I was voting in the Associated Press top 25 poll. I was voting for the Heisman Trophy. I was covering Big Ten college football, and I was 27 years old. But then my wife and I had our first child, who is a high school senior this year, going through the college search process. And it changed my perspective and sort of my lens on what I wanted out of life. And I sort of accidentally stumbled upon a job posting for Augustana College. And it was an entry-level web content creator position. And my skill set and background working at newspapers with content creation and some early stage website and social media work that I'd done at the newspaper was really unique in 2007. And so that got me in the door. And, working for Kent at Augustana, I learned a lot about both marketing and enrollment. I realized pretty quickly I didn't know as much about the audience as I needed to be shaping communications to the audience. So I asked for a recruitment territory. so I could have connection with the students and parents and kind of learn what made them tick. Then when I moved over to Iowa, I spent some time in the central marketing office as the liaison to the admissions office, working on marketing materials, crafting content, managing their social media channels, and eventually ended up in the admissions office running recruitment and communications. Those experiences on campus at a small to mid-sized private school and a large flagship public school in both marketing and enrollment have proven infinitely valuable on this side of the desk to be able to consult with, talk folks on campus through some of the dynamics of the relationship between the enrollment shop and the marketing shop, which is often tense. So that's been very helpful. I've been very lucky in my career journey, and I have learned. I was just talking with a college president yesterday, actually, of a private institution, about my career journey, and I've learned so much in 11 years on this side of the desk. It's like a PhD in higher education, getting to interact with all of you and so many from different campus types who, the problems are similar, but they're all a little bit different and unique to the institutions.
Well, that's kind of what I'd like to follow up with a little bit. I mean, you've been on both sides of the aisle.
Hmm.
You've actually worked for the institution, both big and small. Um, you're now with a well-known consulting group, and particularly serving now as an external advisor.
Yep.
I'm very curious how that combination of things changed the way you approach talking to presidents and cabinets.
I mean, I think it goes back honestly to curiosity and humility. Like you can't come in hot with a solution before you know the problem and before you understand the dynamics that are at play, which are unique on every campus. Some presidents might be dealing with cabinet turnover. They might be dealing with power dynamics on a cabinet or a board that is new and or difficult. Or certain things within their market context that they're trying to resolve. So I think really getting under the hood, listening and learning and asking questions, and then helping where you can. And sometimes that's just offering support. Sometimes that's offering solutions. And again, it's kind of different, case by case.
Very good. Ken?
Eric, you work with a wide range of places, but our audience is primarily small private colleges. When you're working with your client base as well as your colleagues working with other Carnegie clients, what are some of the most common enrollment challenges you're seeing among small private colleges today? And has there been any shift in those challenges over the course of the past few years?
Yeah.
Once
Well, I don't
you
know if,
sort of, as you're thinking about that question, we also want to ask you, are you seeing more and more colleges come to you proactively, or are they
Mm.
still coming to you at a point of urgency? So just a great riff on all of that.
yeah. Well, I don't know if either of you have ever heard of the demographic cliff. I, it is crazy how long we have been talking about that, and we are there. My daughter is in the class of 2026. She is at that sort of line of demarcation. Certainly, that is impacting urgency and has been over the past 4 or 5 years coming out of the pandemic. I think the pandemic exacerbated and accelerated some things that were already happening in terms of trends in the way audiences behaved, priorities for institutions in terms of expanding modality and program offerings for their markets. And I think one thing that we really heard at the CIC President's Institute this year that was different than in past years is there is an eager openness to the mergers, acquisitions, and partnerships conversation that there has not been historically. And I think that all boils down ultimately when you're thinking about small private institutions to enrollment, because it's the enrollment challenges that we're facing that are forcing some of those conversations and considerations around modality and consolidation. But I'm excited about it, honestly, in this moment. I'm hearing some really thoughtful, proactive, strategic conversation about how we can best serve the students through the institutions and their evolution in the future. So one thing I was at a board retreat 2 weeks ago, and one thing that we worked through is thinking about the different types of students that institutions serve today. And I think one tough dichotomy that small liberal arts institutions are in is you're trying to hold on to that sacred cow of the liberal arts and serving that traditional undergraduate residential student through what is a very transformational experience for their lives. And there will always, I believe, be that element to the education. But when we think more broadly about expanding that educational experience to the mid-career, career, or midlife career changer, the person who wants a certificate, the person who needs a master's degree. We can still do that. But I think what has folks maybe stuck is thinking about it like in this moment, rather than thinking about that 19-year-old residential student as a lifelong learner and how we can serve them through their academic journey.
Well, let's kind of keep going down, particularly the enrollment side and maybe a little bit about marketing too. There's
Mhm.
many institutions that still think of enrollment primarily as a marketing campaign or a lead generation sort of concept. And you've also often talked about enrollment as a full institutional system. What does that really mean in practice? And what is that distinction so critical for small colleges?
So I'm going to go on both ends of that
Okay.
question because enrollment, I think, is the easy part that happens in the middle, right? We recruit them, we enroll them. But what happens to them when they get there, and how closely do we pay attention to their level of engagement to make sure that they are plugging into campus, that we are sort of remarketing the experience to them as they have it, to make sure that they're maximizing that and we are maximizing retention in the process. On the top end of that, I think a mistake a lot of institutions, small, mid-size, and large, make is they skip market cultivation altogether in their brand work. They go straight to recruitment marketing. They buy lists of names, they send them direct mail and email, and they expect these students in a very noisy inbox and mailbox to just grab a postcard and decide they're in love with Augustana College. You have to first have a market level cultivation strategy to build awareness and affinity for the institution to give yourself a chance. And that's marketing and branding work at the top. That gives you a chance to stand out in what is a very noisy middle. And then the whole enrollment conversation for far too long has ended at the point of enrollment. And then a lot of campuses don't even have a clear owner of student success and retention. So making sure that we serve that continuum all the way through retention and graduation and think about that holistically as enrollment health for the institution, I think is going to be critical moving forward.
Well, let me follow up pretty quickly about that. You talk about the holistic approach. I mean, do you see then that there should be one person that has ownership of that entire thing, or how does that come together?
I think at a small institution that makes a lot of sense. There are still silos, but there are fewer silos,
Mhm.
and that person, the chief enrollment officer of an institution, and I actually think marketing should probably live in that umbrella too at an institution, in the small to mid range private school.
Right.
Because it's just all so impacted by the other. And you have to build that whole continuum. And every student that you enroll and keep enrolled is critically important to the health of the institution.
Got it.
I've been lucky to have marketing as part of my portfolio almost the entire 20 years that I've been here. And I agree with you, Eric, that's so important because that's where the revenue is driven, both from a student recruitment as well as a student satisfaction standpoint. And to have
Yeah.
those separated or siloed makes the job very, very difficult.
And it allows you to invest in the doers too. If you've got one cabinet person responsible for and accountable for all of that, you can then hire lieutenants and people doing the work to maximize the output.
And get things done. All right,
Yeah.
storytelling, Eric. You do a lot of storytelling, help coach places in storytelling, and every college in America out there thinks that they're a bright, shining light that's just covered up by a bushel basket, right?
Best kept secret. Right?
Yes, the best
Yeah.
kept secret. No, you've never heard that, I'm sure. So the other part of that is every college kind of thinks that they offer a personalized experience. Our audience would love to know from you in your work, what truly differentiates institutions? I mean, how do they break through the noise, and how do they articulate their value? And how important is data to doing that?
Yeah. Data is incredibly important. And I remain amazed at how many institutions I talk to when I ask, when is the last time you did an external market perception study? And they will look blankly like they have never done one. Without understanding your market, your competitors and where you sit within the context of that market, you can't really shape strategy. And I'm not just talking marketing strategy, I'm talking program strategy, I'm talking institutional positioning. all sorts of things. So establishing the baseline for who the market believes you are and where you rank in that pecking order of your competitors is critically important. And then from there, I think it's about narrowing the focus. We suffer in higher education from trying to be everything to everyone. Academically, messaging, branding, creative. We are so afraid of alienating any one single student that we're just spreading ourselves way too thin. So I think that's a strategic conversation and an institutional level of what can we really be known for academically, programmatically, how we serve the students, how we relate to the community and the partnerships we have there. And then how do we message that in a differentiated way? And I think people also confuse the topical stories with expression of story. So if you can narrow the focus on the way you tell a story as an institution and then unify your campus stakeholders around that, you can tell any story you want through those unified lenses, but you've got to tighten it and decide who you're not going to be and how you're not going to sound, and then tell your story with repetition. And every private school, every school in this country has thousands of data points and thousands of stories happening every day around campus that are compelling. You just got to find the right way to tell them.
Hey, Eric, I want to follow up on that.
Yeah.
Carnegie does work in the sort of psychographic personality development space.
Yep.
How central is that part of your work to sort of narrowing the focus or enhancing storytelling? I mean, is that kind of your secret sauce to doing that at Carnegie?
I believe it is, and the psychographics are the foundation of it, and the process is really the magic to it. That we engage campus stakeholders in the conversation around who are you today, who should you be in the future, and who should you never be, and bringing that alive, and then closing the loop for them and training them on how to tell a revised, elevated story through those new lenses is really a powerful transformational experience for the campus community. And whatever method you use, whatever partner you use, if you do it internally, I think just forcing that dialogue around tables of the people who are so invested is really a powerful thing.
Right.
Well, Eric, you spend a lot of time with the presidents and with cabinets, and particularly with enrollment teams. And when you do, what do you see in terms, most often in terms of misalignment between institutional strategies and enrollment execution? And when do those colleges engage with external partners? What's a realistic timeline for seeing some sort of meaningful impact?
That's a great question, Dean. And I think it is one that college presidents and boards don't love the answer to, is that sustained growth. In today's market, sustaining enrollment is growth because you're bucking the trend of what is available in the market. So you've got to know that for starters. But if you're going to set goals, if you're going to expand into new markets, if you're going to grow strategically, you've got to have realistic expectations that that might be a 3, 5, 10-year play that you have to commit to. And you have to know going into it that it's not just a magic switch. It's going to require investment to soften the market, cultivate awareness, to increase your prospect pool in new markets, to invest in digital marketing, outdoor marketing, and things so you have a presence that you wouldn't have had before, and then know that it's going to take several years. I think when I was at Iowa 11 years ago, we had maybe 15 or 20 students a year enroll from California. And we made a dedicated effort. We put somebody on the ground out there. They actually still have the same rep out there. And that is a big part of it too, is the boots on the ground strategy to build the relationships with the high school counselors, to get the first 5 kids so they can tell their cousin and their friends about it and expand that word of mouth. But they got to understand it's a long-term play. And then I think the dynamic that higher education struggles with broadly is we see so much turnover in the presidents and the chief marketing and the chief enrollment officers on campuses that it really causes whiplash, I think, of the doers who are in the work. They're doing a great job. They're making progress. And then 2 years later, the whole direction shifts. So I would encourage new presidential leadership boards to really be thoughtful, curious, and humble in approaching new situations and look for the things that are being done right first, and then tweak and revise and make adjustments. But this holistic upheaval, every 3 to 4 years on campuses is really, I think, slowing progress.
Well, and I think it does something else too. I mean, as we talk about that, we know the lifespan of college presidents has just really gone down over the past 10 years.
Yeah.
But the unintended consequence, I think, is also the issue of there's always a new strategic plan that comes with a president. And I, at times, as you were talking about long-term thinking, um, that strategic plan may or may not really help that along. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
It concerns me a little bit. It's just more of a comment, and maybe that we don't have the people there that have the history, which
Yeah.
is so important, I think.
And institutional knowledge matters a lot,
Yeah.
and that is being lost and forsaken. And that is one trend. You brought up strategic planning. Another trend that we heard at CIC this year is that the people are thinking very differently about strategic planning than they used to. It used to be a 5 year, maybe a 7 year strategic plan. Now it's 24 months, 36 months. So I think it's like what I was saying before about the long-term view is you've got to have long-term eyes on the horizon, but short-term execution because things do
Yeah.
change so rapidly, and short-term measures of success on the way to the long-term sustained success for the institution.
Oh, great. Ken?
All right, Eric, we're going to ask you to take out your crystal ball, and
Okay.
we're going to ask you to answer two things. What do small colleges need to be doing right now in order to remain viable for the future? And as an advisor, what advice would you give to presidents and vice presidents who are feeling unbelievable pressure because of the pace of work right now and the pace of change? So those two questions.
Yeah, I think for presidents, and this is one thing that has struck me the last 2 years at the CIC President's Institute, and I knew this, but it's really I've developed a deeper understanding of these presidents are people. At the end of the day, they put their pants on one leg at a time. They are showing up, doing the best they can with all the insecurities and all the uncertainty that any one of us would have in a role. And so I really have a lot of empathy and a lot of and grant them a lot of grace because it is a very, very difficult job. And boards are difficult, are supportive but difficult to work with. Campus climate has never been more difficult. The political climate around higher education right now is very difficult to navigate. And then the enrollment challenges that were coming upon us anyway were there. So I think for presidents, grant yourself grace and know that you are doing extremely important work, and by and large doing a great job at that work. And then in terms of what I would be thinking about, you got to have the right people on the bus in the right seats. And I think that first and foremost is doing an evaluation of who you have on your team, what is the team dynamic you need? Are you a team as a cabinet? I don't know if you all have ever read Patrick Lencioni's Five Dysfunctions of a Team. But I see that play out, in cabinet dynamics in terms of trust and power dynamics and vulnerability and shared accountability. And so often it's not there. So make sure you're building a high functioning team and then don't overwhelm yourself with the bullet points on your to-do list that you consider strategic. It's easy to be distracted by the urgent and moderately important. Focus on the important things as your anchor, and make sure you're making progress every day on those.
That's great advice. Eric, I think you all have a tool, don't you, for executive leadership teams that also helps kind of uncover the psychographic personality of a leadership team. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's called Team Chem, and it is aligned with the personality archetypes that we use for our branding and audience segmentation. And you take a survey. In fact, I should have had both of you take it before this, but you take a survey that yields a personality solution and a persona, and then there's 7 schema of human performance. And it's a great way to learn about yourself, but also to learn about and relate to others. And then we use the data from the tool to facilitate retreats, team building exercises, and things like that. But yeah, a valuable exercise.
Eric, I did use the tool. I took it and it nailed me. It probably did a better job of nailing me than those cartoon AI things that everybody's posting right now, which didn't get me quite as well.
Yeah.
Eric, I want to ask you one last question. You've talked a lot about leadership and the challenges and the challenges of the work. I'm going to put you on the spot. Hardest job on campus right now at a small college? Is it the president? Is it the VP for enrollment? Is it the VP for communications and marketing? Is it the provost? Or is it the men's basketball?
Oh, I throw a finance into that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
I mean, CFO is a tough job.
It is.
I think the president is so difficult. Like you are juggling people, dynamics, external factors, the board. And the board is so important. It is, I mean, I see this when we do board retreats and meetings with campuses to have an engaged, proactive board who truly understands and takes the time to understand not just higher education, but a school's specific market within higher education that can make or break a presidency. I think the presidency is a very, very difficult job in this moment. And I think I said earlier, I think enrollment and marketing should all be one job. That is a close second. That's a tough one.
Well, look, I'm afraid we're out of time. And Eric, I want to thank you for joining us today and for bringing such a grounded, real world perspective to this conversation. To our audience, for those listening or viewing, if you'd like to learn more about Small College America, go to our website at www.smallcollegeamerica.net, where you can learn more about the details of this current show and upcoming episodes. Of course, you can contact us and suggest topics you'd like us to cover. This episode of Small College America is made possible by the underwriting support of Edge Alliance Group, a higher education consulting firm that champions small colleges and communities they serve. On behalf of our guest, Eric Page, my co-host, Kent Barnds, and I, thank you for joining us. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks, Dean.